All right, let's get started today. Very excited to get going on our next webinar. Today we're going to be talking about data analytics and ClicData 101. We're very excited. We have Elena Dorano. She is from Scotiabank. She's an expert in data governance, and she also will help us walk through some best practices and give us an idea of how to get the most out of your data and data analytics. There are a few things we want to go over first. One of which is we've got 60 minutes. This is going to be a longer one. We do have a lot to cover, so it's going to be pretty good. We will be recording this webinar, so you can share that or review it at a later time. At the bottom right-hand screen, you will see a chat box. Feel free to ask any questions or anything there that you have. If you see that there's problems with audio or visual, feel free to ping that with us there as well. So a few words about ClicData. ClicData is the world's first cloud-based BI solution. We can connect to any data, any source, and anywhere. We were founded in 2009 with our primary offices in Canada, the United States, and France. We have key partners in Latin America, Australia, and Asia. Our systems are currently managing over 1 million KPIs, 100,000 data sets, and 100,000 plus dashboards published every hour. My favorite stat on this slide is that over 94% of our users would highly recommend us to a peer or colleague. ClicData views our process in 4 easy steps. Connect to any data, anywhere, anytime. Pull that data into a smart warehouse, which allows you to then prepare that data. You can create derived metrics, direct metrics, and a lot of different things that you can't do with other tools. Create the visualization and the business intelligence that you're looking for, and most importantly, share that information. All that can easily be done with ClicData and our cloud solution. Today's agenda, we're going to go over data analytics. What does that mean? What is ETL? What is a data warehouse? Which visualizations you should use, and more importantly, when you should use them, and how to successfully drive a BI project with your team. And we'll also have a quick demo of the BI platform. And with that, I'm going to turn the topic over to Shri Neve. Shri?
Introduction about ClicData. And thanks, Elena, for joining us for the webinar today. So just before we get into what is data analysis, what is ETL, what is a data warehouse, and talk more about best practices on dashboard visualization, I just want to take you back to what's the history of data analytics. And it's quite fascinating that the earliest examples we have of human analyzing data are the tally sticks in 1960s or in 1800 BCE. Paleolithic tribes actually would mark notches into sticks of bones to keep track of trading activity. They would then compare their sticks and carry calculations to predict how long would their food last. Then moving on in 2400 BCE, abacus was invented, which was a word.
Shri, it looks like we may have lost you.
Hey, Rob, can you hear me now?
Now we can. Thank you. Yes.
Seems like I had some connection issues. So in 2400 BC, abacus was invented, which was a widely adopted counting device and looked very similar to a bar chart today. And it allowed a visual representation of the data collected. One of the examples of data analytics which has helped organizations take faster decisions could be seen in 1800. In 1800, US Census had a problem in front of them where counting the census might need up to 8 years. Every 10 years, a new census is calculated, which would mean by the time they finish counting, a new batch of data will be available. A young engineer working at US Census named Herman Hollerith, he developed an electromagnetic tabulating machine which used punch cards. Using this machine, the work was reduced from 8 years to 3 months. He did form a company right after that, which was later collaborated with 4 other companies to be eventually called as IBM. So this is how, just a very brief evolution of how data analysis has gone from notches in the stick to actually more visual representation and starting to become more tabulated machine computers coming into it. And moving forward, we have big data, AI, machine learning, all of them to come. So what really is data analytics? Data is collected and used to answer questions, test hypotheses, present raw information in visual format that is comprehensible to the end user. Data analytics provides a medium to take necessary operational decisions to run your day-to-day business activities and make the decisions to compete in the business environment. Some facts about data. On average, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is generated around the world. In fact, your organization might be generating millions of raw of data on a daily basis, considering the tools that today's businesses use. We use everything from marketing, sales tools, CRM tools. You might have productions running, which might have operational tools. There's raw data that is generated in every business process, which provides certain information. And on top of this raw data, there's also metadata, which is the raw data of the raw data, which provides additional information. What results have shown is 73% of the corporate data today, it never gets consumed. And data analytics fills that gap for you. We've also seen that organizations using data analytics to drive decisions are 23 times more likely to compete better in the market against their peers. So that's a little bit about what is data analytics. It's really a means to convert the raw information into something meaningful and why you should be using data analytics if you've not already adopted it. You might have heard the terms about descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive analytics at a few different places. I want to start off with an example. I really want to say, let's take up a healthcare facility. And if in a healthcare facility, you are measuring the types of occurrences, the volume of patients, the details for patients, that's your descriptive data. If you're checking a patient for symptoms and then further analyzing it by drilling down on different aspects of similar symptoms, that becomes your diagnostic analysis. Now, based on the symptoms, the volume of patients, you may notice a trend and predict a surge in volume of patients next week. This is where you start getting into predictive analytics. Now that you know that the volume of patients is going to increase next week, you start taking decisions with your operational manager. You decide to hire additional staff, and that becomes your prescriptive analytics. Drilling down deeper into the section, the way I like to put it is descriptive tells you what happened. Diagnostic tells you why did this happen. Predictive tells you what will happen. And prescriptive tells you what should I do. In terms of descriptive analytics, it really highlights the trends on historical data. It provides information on how your business is running. The way to do descriptive analytics is mostly by graphs, charts. In terms of diagnostic, since it tells you why did it happen, it describes the state of operation of your business. You have certain hypotheses. If you had a good year, if you did not have a good year in terms of sales, you start validating those hypotheses by drilling deeper on the root causes of the outcomes that you have discovered. Diagnostic data can also be represented visually using charts. You have drill down tables that allow you to drill further into root causes and visualize that information. In terms of predictive analytics, you start creating models for your business. You start monitoring the future operation. It provides a context to predict the future path of your business. Based on what has happened and why it happened, it tells you what might happen tomorrow. It allows you to predict if your sales are going to increase in the next few months, in the next few years. Is your business going to prosper or not? Machine learning, AI, and regression analysis become a part of predictive analytics. When it comes to prescriptive analytics, you have all this information that you have gathered. You have knowledge of running the business on a day-to-day basis. The predictive analytics derives the prescriptive analytics, and in terms of prescriptive analytics, you start providing suggestions to those future outcomes, either to correct them or either to make them better, you start taking actions on your day-to-day business operations so that your business can keep running efficiently. What I want to go back to with the types and with the data analytics to a model that I use quite constantly. It's a DIKW pyramid. It's often used to explain the ways we move from data to information to knowledge and to wisdom, with a component of action and decision in every step. We know that when we collect raw data, it comes in a jumbled form. The model describes how that data can be processed and transformed into information, knowledge, and wisdom. It's a model to look at various ways of extracting insights and value from all sorts of data. Let's talk a little bit more about the components of this DIKW model. On the left-hand side at the model, you'll see there's the raw data called as color red. The scenario here is you're driving a car, you look at the fuel barometer, and you see the color red. At this moment, it's just a set of signals and symbol. It's nothing more. I would say it's also noise. It's unprocessed, it's unorganized. It does not give you any decision-making attribute. It just tells you there's a color red. What, when, and who questions are raised here to get more answers. The next step is, what is this color? Once these questions are raised, once you get the information, once you get the answers to that, that's when the information layer comes in. You start adding more value to this data. You know now that it's not just a red color, but it's the indicator on the fuel barometer, which is set on the red strip. Even with this, you're not yet taking any information, any decisions. You have just given information to your data. Knowledge is the next step in this journey, and probably the most significant leap. It implicitly requires learning, whereas information can help us understand relationship, knowledge allows you to now detect patterns. It allows you to combine different sets of information. For instance, the fuel barometer on the red strip means that the car that I'm driving is going to run out of gas now. So I'm starting to make a little bit of context to this particular information that I have. And finally is the wisdom. I would say that's the final frontier. Wisdom relies not only on the internal data and patterns that you've discovered, but also on your experience, the expertise, and the external data. The red strip on your fuel barometer indicator tells you that the car is running out of gas, but it doesn't tell you what you should do. This is where your wisdom comes in, where having driven the car for so many years and understanding the mechanics of the engine, you take a decision that you need to refill the gas at the next gas station so that you can continue with your journey. This is how I would say that you need to apply the DIKW model in business context as well. You start off by taking raw data, and you start off by creating an information on this raw data. Once that information is derived, you take this information, make it into something meaningful, and once you know that, you take the right actions that need to be done next. Moving on, we'll talk a little bit into the technical terms about ETL. You might have come across these terms multiple times if you're evaluating a data analytics tool, or if you're working with a database. You might have heard about the concept ETL. You might have heard about the term ETL. What ETL really stands for is extract, transform, and load. The way I like to explain it is, today's businesses, they're working with multiple applications, multiple sources. With extract, what we are doing is you're trying to aggregate all this information into one single source. That data might not be yet meaningful for you because you have raw data coming in from 10 different applications. This is where the transform stage comes into the picture. You can start creating a structured form to these unstructured data sets. You can start adding calculations. You can start combining these data sets together. For instance, if you have data coming in from a marketing tool, which tells your business how many visitors you have, and on the other side, you might have sales information, which gives you the revenue you're generating on a day-to-day basis. You need to combine these two data sets so that you can make meaningful decisions based on the marketing efforts that have been put in and the sales, if that correlates or not. Eventually, this data needs to be stored somewhere, and that's where your data warehouse comes in. Data warehouse, like how I like to put it, is a single source of all your databases. You have multiple applications, you collate them, you cleanse them, you normalize the data, you bring structure to your data, and then eventually store it on the data warehouse. And really, this data warehouse becomes your next layer for analytics. Once you have a data warehouse, you start analyzing the data on top of your data warehouse. Talking about the different components of ETL. If you're looking for an ETL solution, I like to say you have to look at the four following components. The first one is collate. An ETL tool should be able to combine data sets from all these different sources, aggregate and put it in a single source. Not just collate it, but it should be able to validate the information. It should notify businesses if there is an error in the data. Once you have the collate and validate step, you want to automate this whole process. You don't want to go back to an ETL tool and manually input the data every time. You want the business to run at a fast pace, and for that, you need automation. So make sure that the ETL tool can go in and automate the whole process. Eventually, your business is going to grow, and the volume of data that you get is going to keep on increasing. So make sure if you're looking for an ETL tool, you can also start scaling up and growing as your business grows. With that, I want to end a little. This is a brief about data analytics, ETL, and a few models that I like to use. I'm going to hand it over to Elena, our co-host. She's going to talk more about how to design a highly effective dashboard, and she's going to touch on the visualization layer. We have so far seen the data warehouse and the data side. We'll go to the visualization layer now.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you all for inviting me today. I'm very excited to be here. And I will be talking about what makes a dashboard effective and how to choose the right visualizations for your dashboard. Dashboards are intended to save time and effort, providing a simpler representation of complex and abstract data. Their objective is to keep people well informed of what's going on and to allow them to take the right decision at the right time for their business. Unfortunately, I have seen dashboards which barely scratch the surface of their potential. Most dashboards communicate too little, and what they display poorly. What makes a dashboard highly effective? I highlighted a couple of characteristics that a dashboard should have. Firstly, when it comes to simplicity, a dashboard should be designed for at-a-glance monitoring. The real purpose of the dashboard is to present complex information in an understandable format. When a user accesses a dashboard, he wants to get an overview of what's going on and quickly to identify what needs attention. Next, the user should look more closely of each of those areas that need attention to be able to understand and determine if something should be done. Lastly, if additional details are needed to complete the user's understanding before deciding how to respond, more information can be provided using interactions and filters, but keep in mind to keep it simple. When it comes to clarity, always start a dashboard project by keeping the goal in mind. Start by identifying and classifying the stakeholders, defining and prioritizing requirements, and setting a clear goal for your dashboard. Before starting the design, find the answers for a couple of questions. Who is going to use the dashboard? What problems are you trying to solve by delivering it to the stakeholders? How much experience do the users have with the presented KPIs? A dashboard should raise the awareness of the stakeholders and allow them to take proactively better decisions for their business. When it comes to efficiency, one of the dashboard's goal, once the dashboard's goal was identified, keep in mind that you should provide all the information needed in a one screen size page. Choosing the right KPIs in a limited space is challenging, and I captured a quote that I like very much. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. Unfortunately, too often the criteria for including the information in a dashboard is based on stakeholders' power and influence. However, the selection of the right KPIs, it's the at the intersection of the four areas. Actionable. My first strategy to define actionable and insightful KPI is to understand the needs and the objective of the business activity. Common interpretation refers to the fact that all end users should know and understand the KPI's definition. This can be tackled by adding a legend or a reference link pointing to the definitions on your dashboard. Accessible. The data to build the KPIs can be acquired with modest effort from a source that an organization trusts. Finally, the KPI should be transparent. How the metric is generated is shared and easy to understand. Once the KPIs are chosen and defined in the requirements document during the planning phase of the project, the dashboard creator needs to choose the right widget for visualization. Next, I will be talking about a couple of widgets that ClicData offers to represent the KPIs in a dashboard. Firstly, one of the most common widgets is the column or bar charts, and they are used for comparing specific category values. They represent the overall shape of data and are designed to show multiple instances. I personally avoid using vertical or diagonal text to label the axis of a bar chart since it's difficult to read. If the horizontal axis has longer text descriptions, I use a bar chart so that the text can be read from left to right horizontally. Keep it simple. Column charts can be difficult to read if there are too many categories. In this case, try grouping the categories and visualize the data using filters or drill down capabilities that ClicData offers. As a last point, use the bar chart or a column chart only when you have a nominal or ordinal scale. A nominal scale describes a variable with categories that do not have a natural order or ranking. For example, in the chart in the slide, you can see the locations, which is a nominal scale. An ordinal scale is one where the order matters. For example, the economic status. Low income, middle income, high income. You want to order them starting from low to high. The line chart shows best the data over a period of time, and they are used when you have an interval scale. Line chart should be used for time series, and ClicData offers a time series chart with lots of interactions. Or you can use when there is some other sequence to the dimensions. For example, you want to show the sales over the years, or you want to use when you have an horizontal axis dimensions, such as the sequence of stages of a project. Use a line chart when you want to detect trends and patterns and not to give people exact quantitative reading or exact numbers. The area chart is used to compare quantitative data, and it can be visualized in two ways. One with data plots overlapping each other, and another one with data plots stacked on top of each other. The second one, the stacked area chart, is comparatively easier to read than the overlapped one. Also, keep in mind that the number of categories that you need to showcase should be limited, and I personally recommend not to use more than 3 categories for visibility reasons. Another commonly used widget is the pie chart. The pie chart shows different categories, how different categories relate to the whole, and I consider this its biggest advantage. The reader knows automatically that he's looking at parts of a whole. However, the pie chart aren't the perfect choice in my opinion. They rank low in precision because users find it difficult to accurately compare the sizes of the pie slices. Although such charts can be instantly scanned and users will notice the biggest slice immediately, there can be problems when the smallest slices are so small that they cannot even be displayed. Again, avoid using them when you have more than 3-4 categories because it is hard to absorb the information. A stacked bar chart is a type of chart that displays multiple data points on top of each other. They show the main category that contains smaller categories, demonstrating how each part relates to the total. There are two types of stack bar charts, the simple one and the 100%. And the major disadvantage of the stack bar chart is that they are harder to read the more segments each bar has. For example, in the represented bar chart in the image, it is very easy to compare the revenue for the smartphone across the categories, across the age groups. But it is a little bit more difficult to compare the laptops and the desktops because they are not aligned to a common baseline. There are also times when a BI developer needs to choose between a chart and displaying the data in a table. A couple of items we should take into account when choosing between the two visualizations: the nature of the information, the nature of the message, the needs and preferences of the stakeholders. Tables, with their rows and columns of data, interact primarily with our verbal system. Tables are meant to be read, so they are ideal when you have data that cannot easily be presented visually, and when the data requires more specific attention. When I have a table in front of me, I scan across the rows, down the columns, and I compare the values. Tables are great when you have an audience who wants to do that. Tables are also handy when you have many different units of measure, which can be difficult to pull off in a graph. In general, tables help you evaluate datasets that have multiple dimensions and values without creating complex visualizations. Graphs, on the other hand, interact with our visual system. Graphs can present an immense amount of data quickly in an easy-to-consume fashion. They are particularly useful when there is a point to be made in the shape and trend of the data. ClicData offers three table widgets: the simple table, the drill down, and the pivot table. No matter of what table widget you choose, make sure that it is easy to read, the columns and rows are delineated, sort the data in a logical way, and align the numbers to the right and the text to the left. Highlight the subtotals and use conditional formatting or heat map options. If you want to read more about choosing the right visualizations for your dashboard, I recommend Stephen Few's book. It is a great resource. And I would like to thank you all for your attention. I will hand over back to Shri.
Thank you, Elena. That was really great, telling us more about how we should end up using each component and each visualization chart. That was very helpful. And having understood what data analytics is, what data analytics derives, I think it's really important to understand how to best visualize that information in a meaningful manner so that you can take decisions. We're going to talk a little bit about how do you go about implementing a BI project internally. Knowing data analytics, knowing how to best visualize it is, I would say, half of the battle, but you still want to go ahead and implement a BI project internally. Doing that, we have a database framework that we typically use while while providing consulting services. We start off by really understanding the audience. This is the 6-block framework, which contains a few different elements. And the first and foremost block on the left top is the audience. The audience, understanding the audience is always the first step because you want to start creating a dashboard or implementing a BI project with the end goal in perspective. You want to know before you start doing it who the audience is. Once you have identified the end user, you're really trying to pin down some objectives. What is the purpose of this journey? Why am I doing and why am I creating this dashboard? Having the purpose and audience is not enough. A dashboard should allow you to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. So thinking about a dashboard layer, you are trying to identify what are the actions that your audience are trying to create. If you're creating a dashboard for a salesperson, are you trying to instigate an action where your salesperson can look at the dashboard and they can make decisions on what product they should sell tomorrow or which products they should not sell tomorrow? and that becomes your action. So you're trying to create a dashboard so that your salesperson can make better informed decisions on what products they should sell. The first three blocks are more internal. It takes a lot of discussions with the team members to derive to conclusions on what the purpose is, what decisions you're trying to make. And once you have identified that, that's when you go back and start looking at what are these data sources that could be helpful for us to take these decisions. Many users start at the data sources before, and I would say it's not the best practice to start at the data sources before, because if you today you are consuming a lot of data, as a business, you have a lot of different applications that you use, and data can come from many sources. So you're really trying to focus on a specific business problem and try to address that. And that's why we start with the audience, the decisions they're trying to make, and let's see which data would be useful for them to make those decisions. Based on the actions that you have identified, start determining which KPIs that should be useful. Define the KPI as well. One particular KPI definition might mean something for a salesperson, might mean something else for a different team. Make sure when you're going with the KPIs, you define them, you write in the formulas. Eventually, once you have the data sources, the KPIs, that's when you go to the dashboard layer where you decide what are the components that go into the dashboard. We do have an entire blog about each step and detailing each step. We will cover this more again on one of our upcoming webinars. And you can also read the blog on how we can go ahead and take a structured approach. With that, I'm going to move on to a ClicData demo. I'm going to show just the basics of getting started on ClicData. We'll try to tackle all the components we have spoken. What is the data warehouse? What is the ETL process? And eventually we create a dashboard. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. This is ClicData. If you don't have an account yet, please go ahead and free trial on clickdata.com. We have a 14-day free trial that you could use. ClicData is a business intelligence tool, and we do everything from the ETL process, the data warehousing, create a dashboard layer, and we also go further by creating automation on top of what you've done, setting up alert systems, managing users, managing a multi-tenant system. It's an enterprise tool that allows you to really take the data up to the next level and helps your organization to make decisions. For this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to connect to a car sales dealer, try to do the extract layer first, try to get the information onto ClicData. Once we have the information on ClicData, we'll see if there's any kind of transformation we need to do, talking about the second layer. Once we have that, we'll try to see if we can visualize this whole information into a dashboard. We offer different connectors, several different connectors. As I mentioned earlier, that you could have your marketing team using marketing tools, your sales team using different tools, your operational team using different tools. So that's why we offer more than 50 different connections that you can connect to, and you can get data from marketing tools such as Google Analytics or Facebook. You can get data from sales tools such as Salesforce or any other CRM tool. And you can also get data from databases such as SQL database, Postgres database, MySQL database. So if you're using any of these applications, we can collate all this information to one single source. So the first thing we end up doing is let's connect to a Google Drive where I have my information stored. And on this Google Drive, I have a few different files. I'm just going to go ahead and import a sales file onto ClicData. Having selected the sales table, you can click on Next on ClicData. Once you click on Next, that particular file gets imported to data. We're already doing a little bit of cleansing at this step itself, because when you're importing a data, we start by defining a schema for your data set. And based on the schema, if a column has been identified as a date, if you have any dates, the data is already starting to get cleansed up. Once you have selected a table that you want to pull over, you click Next, and that particular table gets imported to ClicData. Right at this step, we can set up an automation. I mentioned one of the components about ETL is making sure you can automate the whole process. Having an automation helps because now your data can be refreshed on a daily basis. It can be refreshed every minute. It can be refreshed every hour. You choose the frequency, and the data will get refreshed at that time. So it's a one-time setup. You plug your data, you bring it in, and then you automate it so that you keep on getting new batch of data on an ongoing basis. I've already loaded the other files for this particular sales dealer. The particular sales dealer has transactional data on the sales table. However, on the sales table itself, they have information such as manager ID, customer ID, dealership ID. The customer information might be residing on a CRM tool, which is a separate tool, or the manager information might be residing on an internal tool, again, a separate tool. So we need to start combining this information together. The way we do it at ClicData is we have a feature called as data merge. The data merge allows you to select multiple files. And if you click on action at the bottom and merge data, it allows you to start by giving a name to your to the new file that you're creating. I'm going to call this as my sales. It provides you with a screen that allows you to manage relationships between different data sources. If you've used Action in the past or any other database, it's similar to creating joins between tables. Between the 2 or 3 tables that you're trying to join, you have a unique key. You start by linking those unique keys. I have a manager ID, which matches to the manager ID on my manager table, and I have the dealership ID, which matches to the dealership ID on my left table. Once I have the link connected, I start by choosing where is my dealer, which state is the dealer in. I want to get all the columns from my sales table because I would need them for my analysis. But further, I also want to get the manager first and last name, which area the manager is, and maybe also the email address for the manager. So with these, I have connected 3 different tables into one single source. I've created a relationship between them, and this is how I'm starting to create my data. So that's your transformation layer. Obviously, the transformation layer has more to it. We also do calculations, we do views, we do unions. So there's a lot more that goes into extract or goes into transformation of a data. But I've just started by showing one of the component that could be the join between different tables. Once your data is ready, that's where you go to the next step on visualizing it. And if you go back to the data viz framework, we have to talk about the audience, understand what's the objective of the audience, what decisions they're trying to make, and based on that, go ahead and start creating your analytics layer on top of it. Within the dashboard, if you click on Add New, you start off by giving a name to your dashboard. This is my sales report. And once you click Create, you're presented with a blank canvas on the right-hand side with different objects on your left-hand side. ClicData has been designed to be used by anyone just by drag and drop. So if you're trying to create a bar chart or a column chart, any of the particular chart, you just drag and drop that particular chart. Going back to what Elena was speaking, if you're trying to display timelines, a line chart or an area chart might be the display the timelines. So I'm going to go ahead and try to see what's the revenue of this particular sales dealer is. I drag and drop a line chart to get that information. I start by selecting a data set. I select a data set that I've just created. And within that data set, I have a column that tells me when the car was sold and a column that tells me the revenue. I drag and drop my revenue column in the values, which displays one single point. At this stage, I've not yet added a timeline to it. To add a timeline, I just drag and drop my date sold in categories. And I can see now a progress on how much sales I'm doing on a daily basis. But the daily information doesn't tell me much. I'm trying to look on a yearly performance review. Is my dealer doing a better job every year or not. So I grouped my data by year. And now I can clearly see an upward rising trend that definitely the dealer has been doing great performance-wise in the last 2-3 years. 15 and 16, they might have started off, but 18 and 19, there was a significant improvement and the car sales have been doing much better. That's my first element on the dashboard. And just to make it visually appealing to my end users, I go to the format and start adding a few other components, giving a name to the chart. That's my revenue year on year. Click on save, and I have my first chart ready on the dashboard. The next item I would like to visualize is how is my dealer doing based on the different car brands or car models? Which model is performing better than the other? A good way to represent that information could be using a drill down table. I drag and drop a drill down table anywhere on the dashboard. Same approach as before. You drag and drop the table. You start by selecting the data set. And once you select the data set, you're presented with a few different columns on what information would you like to display. So I'm trying to understand which are the top 5 models that I'm selling. I drag and drop the model in drill down columns. Or actually, I'll go with car brands. Let's see which are the top 5 car brands. And I drag and drop revenue in values. I click on sort and filter and just add a top bottom. Probably you want to see the top 5. And I select the value revenue. And these are my top 5 car brands. So far, what we've done is more about descriptive analytics. Diagnostic could come into picture when you're talking about, yeah, that's great. I see that the car brand Chevrolet is doing great, but is there a particular model and car brand that is doing better than the others? Should I ask my salespeople to sell that particular car model in future? We can start doing that analysis as well. So we can start drilling down into the data further. You can further add car model as you drill down column. And now you can click on the Chevrolet and you can see that Clubman was doing better than anything else. So this is how you can start getting into additional information and trying to get a whole idea of how the business or a particular car model in this case is doing. Having had 2 objects on the dashboard, I want to add a third layer, which allows me to visualize or filter the data. But before I go to that step, or before I show that step, we have a lot of documents about that as well. And just looking at the time and trying to stay concise with the demo, I want to take you directly to a completed dashboard, which we have built. So this is a completed dashboard for that particular car sales dealer. Right now, we're showing an overall general view of how the business is doing. You can quickly identify who are the top 5 sales representatives, how is the yearly performance, a trend of yearly performance, which are the top 5 car models that are being sold. I can drill down further for diagnostic analysis by region if I want to understand if a particular region was doing better within Asia, if a particular country was doing better. If I want to understand by sales rep, again, I can drill down further and try to identify if a particular sales rep was doing better. And even for a particular sales rep, if a particular car model was doing better. That's a little bit about introduction to data analytics and also to ClicData. There's a lot more that goes in on ClicData. We have a lot of other features. We can definitely talk about it if anyone is interested. If you're signed up for an account, you can set up a demo and we can show you around all the features on ClicData. With that, I'm going to pass on back to Telmo if there are any questions from the audience.
I want to thank Elena Dornianu for everything that she has done in the past and in preparation for this webinar, and for taking the time. Shri, thank you very much for doing this. There has been some questions just before I go, but we will answer them via email. these slides will be available for download. There was some question on pie charts and why weren't they covered, and of course some other questions as to how to determine the best KPIs. But obviously those are more difficult questions to answer in terms of depending on your business and depending on your situation. So again, thank you very much, Elena. Thank you very much, Sri. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We appreciate your time. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you.